Well, as Jim mentioned, our theme for the month of March is wisdom. To begin, I will offer my definition of wisdom, which goes like this. Wisdom is the eusocial application of knowledge and experience. Wisdom is the eusocial application of knowledge and experience. I like that odd but increasingly trendy term, eusocial, EU social, because it explicitly names what is ethical. What is ethical is doing what is good for human flourishing and planet flourishing. Eusocial began life as a term in biology for the actions of cooperative insects like bees and ants, but it has a good deal to teach us primates as well. It's a wise sort of word. Now, in Latin, the word for wisdom is sapiente, where we get the term homo sapiens, wise human, which I often think it's not all that wise to call yourself wise, so it's probably a bad term. My definition of wisdom, the eusocial application of knowledge and experience, implies, I think, that wisdom resides in being unbiased and compassionate in the consideration of others and other ideas. It implies, I think, self-knowledge and self-transcendence, getting outside your own stuff and bother and into a place where you can see the bigger picture. Back to Dr. Robbins' words that in your order of service this morning, what if making meaning is the religion of today? What if that is how we build a new world? I've mentioned before the wisdom I learned from one of my grandfathers who often says, the only thing we poor folks get out of life is what we manage to eat, which I think is kind of wise. And it does keep your expectations fairly low. And it also rhymes with another of my grandfather's sayings, ain't no pockets in a shroud, which was a reminder that life is short and accumulations are, if anything, only temporary. The more recent iteration of that, my father often said, ain't no trailer hitch on a hearse. You're not taking it with you, are you? Now, neither my grandfather nor my father ever heard the word carpe diem, but that's the idea. Now, I don't want to leave my grandmother's wisdom out of it. She often said, you flit around with the butterflies, you're going to end up in a cow pile. Which, those of you who know cow piles know that butterflies really love them, right? Those sorts of sayings are very common in European peasant literature from the past. Expect little and stay in your lane and in your social rank. The oldest advice that I know of in English goes way back to 1100, which is about as early as something can be in English, and it goes like this, high winds blow down the tallest trees. It's easy to find references to wisdom among the world's thinkers. Socrates said the only true wisdom is in knowing what you don't know. Confucius said real knowledge is to know the extent of your ignorance. The Buddhist said, a fool who recognizes his own ignorance is thereby wise. But Shakespeare, as usual, phrased it best, the fool doth think he is wise, but the wise man knows himself to be a fool. There is a pattern there, I think you probably notice. Now, I'm a fan of wisdom, I suppose I could say, and for my money, the wisest text ever written is the Tao Te Ching, which I've tried my hand at translating. It's not easy out of old Chinese. A couple of weeks ago, I mentioned Ursula K. Le Guin, one of my favorite translators of the Tao Te Ching, and here's a couple of things from her translation. Knowing other people is intelligence. Knowing yourself is wisdom. Overcoming others takes strength. Overcoming yourself takes greatness. Contentment is wealth, which goes back to what my grandfather said and what was in the story today. Contentment is wealth. She ends that particular chapter, chapter 33, with this verse: "To live till you die is to live long enough." Wise words, I think. And back to that little eusocial bit, here's a verse: "Wise souls are good at caring for people, never turning their back on anyone." Kind of eusocial, isn't it? In Norse mythology, the wisest god of all is the chief god, Odin. And I don't know if you've noticed, but he's always pictured with one eye. So, what happened to Odin's other eye? Well, the key to understanding what happened is to know that Odin's greatest quest was for wisdom. So one day he heard about a well, Mimir's well, which contained all wisdom. So off Odin went in search of Mimir's well. Now, according to the Norse, the world rests on a great tree called Yggdrasil. The heavens are at the top, Middle Earth is where we are, and down at the root of the tree is a bunch of wells down there. Now, no, I don't know what the tree rests on, right? You can't go there. But Yggdrasil has 3 wells among its roots, and one of them is Mimir's well. Now, the name Mimir, M-I-M-I-R, means to remember. Etymologically, you can hear member, Mimir, remember, right? Well, that's in Old Norse, it means to remember. Also, it means to be wise. And the point is clear: wisdom lies in remembering the old stories. When Odin arrived at the well, there was Mimir standing guard over the deep well, with water so clear he could see all the way to the bottom. Odin knew that if he could only drink from the well, he would possess all wisdom. So Odin asked Mimir, "Might I have a drink from your well?" "Sure," Mimir said, "but it'll cost you." "I'll pay any price," Odin said. "What do you want?" "Oh," said Mimir, "not much, only your right eye." And in the story, we're not told how long he hesitated. If he said, let me think about that overnight, we don't know. We do know that Odin reached for a knife, gouged out his right eye, and threw it into the well, where, if you ever happen to go there, you can still see it at the bottom today. Mimir then reached a drinking horn down into the water, scooped up some of the water, gave it to Odin, who drank it, and voila, he becomes the wisest of the gods. There are several interpretations of this. One, the assumption of the culture that produced this story is that remembering the past is the way to wisdom. The Old Norse term saga means both story and wise saying. What's the symbolism of this story? Well, probably that Odin was trading part of one of his very limited modes of perception, sight, for a far more reliable mode of perception, knowing and honoring the old stories and sayings from the past. That, for him, was wisdom. Here's another one reported as the words of Jesus. "Everyone then who hears these words of mine and acts on them will be like a wise man who built his house on rock. The rain fell, the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on the house, but it did not fall, because it had been founded on rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not act on them will be like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat against the house, and it fell, and great was its fall." End quote. That's wisdom. And it also, as a folk motif, operates in another story you probably know, Three Little Pigs. A wolf is after the poor 3 little pigs. One builds a house of straw, which is quick to build, but when the wolf huffs and puffs, oh, the house falls down. Second little pig builds a house of wood. It's a little bit longer in the process, but it too collapses with a few huffs and puffs from the wolf. The third little pig builds a house of brick. It takes a lot longer to build, but when the wolf is at the door and he huffs and he puffs, the house holds strong. And the message is clear. The wise, or at least the prudent anyway, take the time to get the basics taken care of correctly. Well begun is half done, as the very wise Mary Poppins would have said. Now, I'm going to take time for one more story. This is from the chapter 2 of the book of Ecclesiastes in Hebrew Scripture, one of what's known as the wisdom books in Judaism. The book claims to be written by King Solomon, the wisest of all the Hebrew kings. Actually, Solomon lived some 400 years before the book was written down. It's been dated somewhere around 450 BCE. And here's how chapter 2 goes. In my heart I said, "Come, I will try mirth. Enjoy yourself." Behold, this was empty air. Empty air in Hebrew is havel, right? It also means nonsense, right? I said of laughter, "It is mad," and of mirth, "What's the point?" I tried to dedicate myself to wine, yet still I thirsted for wisdom rather than folly, wondering what is best for humanity to do under heaven all the days of our lives. I created great things. I built houses, I planted vineyards, I made gardens and orchards and planted all kinds of trees. I made pools of water for nurturing the trees. I hired servants and maids, and I had servants born in my house. And I had many animals, great and small, more than anyone ever in Jerusalem before me. I gathered silver and gold and the peculiar treasure of kings from the provinces. I hired singers, both men and women, and musical instruments and all the earthly delights. Thus I was greater than anyone before me in Jerusalem. Furthermore, I remained wise. Whatsoever my eyes desired, I got it. I withheld not my heart from any joy, for my heart rejoiced in all my works and in the products of all my works. Then I looked on all the works that my hands had wrought, and on the things that I had worked hard for, and behold, all of it was empty air, hovel, nonsense, and vexation of spirit. I saw that there is nothing to be gained under the sun. So I turned myself to the study of wisdom, madness, and folly. For what can't a king do? Then I realized that anyone can only do what has already been done before. Wisdom surpasses folly as far as light surpasses darkness. The wise one's eyes are in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. I perceived that one event happens to us all. Then I said in my heart, as it happens to the fool, so it will happen even to me. And so how is it that I am more wise? Then I said in my heart, this also is empty air, for there is no remembrance of the wise before more than the fools, since that which is now will, in days to come, be forgotten. I asked myself, how dies a wise one? I answered, exactly like a fool. Thus it was that I began to hate life, because the work that is done under the sun was grievous to me. All of it was empty air and vexation of spirit. Yes, I hated all the work that I had done under the sun, because I have to leave it all to the ones who will come after me. And who knows whether they will be wise or fools. Whichever they are, they shall rule over all of my work and all of my wisdom. It's all empty air. Therefore, I despaired of all the work that I had done under the sun. For here is one whose work is wise and knowledgeable and fair, yet I must leave it all to those who may be unworthy. This is empty air and great evil. What do you get for all our work, for all this vexation of heart under the sun? All our days are sorrows. All our work is grief. It is true, our hearts cannot even rest in the night. It's all empty air. There is nothing better than that we should eat and drink and that we should make our souls enjoy good in our work. I have seen that this is from the hand of God who gives us to eat and to enjoy. God gives to those God wishes wisdom, knowledge, joy. To other, God heaps sorrow. This also is havel, empty air, and lahagia, vexation of spirit. End quote. That's the second chapter. No, turn is not in that part, right? It's a different chapter. Now, it's long been debated why and how a book that denies the existence of an afterlife and claims that life is meaningless could end up in Hebrew Scripture. Is it because of the claim made in the book that the wise King Solomon wrote it? Or is it because the book expresses explicitly what is implicit in much of Hebrew thought that was then edited out of Christian thought? Finally, I'd say the book asks the very same question that Dr. Robin asks. What if making meaning is the religion of today? In the midst of cosmic meaninglessness, the book of Ecclesiastes suggests a very simple formula. There is nothing better than to eat and drink and that we make our souls enjoy good in our work. The wise choose to pursue wisdom. Now, you don't have to give an eye to receive the wisdom of Odin. It's about the stories. In the reading this morning, Dr. Robbins says, what if a new fold of becoming is upon us and we lean into the stories that have been left to us to make meaning? That's a good question. What if we look back into those stories and ignore the cliches and all the stuff that's built up around them and look at them again as stories, as wise stories to teach us something? I concur. Listen to the stories, learn from the stories, question the questions, and embrace knowing that ultimately, like Solomon almost said, we will never know. The story of First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis is a story of embracing that wisdom through time, eating, drinking, enjoying ourselves, listening to the stories, embracing freedom and joy. Freedom from the dogmas and the polemics of both religion and irreligion. Joy in a life lived to its fullest, and then wisely letting go, because there ain't no hitch on a hearse. We listen and we ask questions and we try to find meaning. That is our religion. Humanism counsels us to live radical lives of freedom and responsibility. And the people of FUS have long worked to achieve that freedom for ourselves and for all people, because we believe in a shared life in a shared world. We don't rail against superstition. We merely, like the author of Ecclesiastes, live our lives searching for a better way. For more than a century, the people of FUS have asked Dr. Robbins' new and incisive question: what if making meaning is the religion of today? What if that is how we build a new world? And I'll let the Tao Te Ching have the last wise words here. To be comfortable in the cold, keep moving. To be comfortable in the heat, hold still. To be comfortable in this world, stay calm and clear. Thanks for listening. You can find much more about humanism and what's happening at First Unitarian Society in Minneapolis by visiting our website at firstunitarian.org.